Hello, and a very warm welcome to today's On the Spot, the 15-minute coffee break shaped episode that explores, well, just interesting ideas in and around business change, business analysis. And I'm really pleased today to be joined by Ron Ross. I'm sure everyone watching will know of Ron's work in the business rules community. You may well have read one or many of Ron's books. The one that I've read most recently is Business Knowledge Blueprints. And this is one that if you're a business analyst, I'd definitely recommend you take a look at. And Ron, I was looking on Amazon at the books you've written. And are you the same Ron G. Ross that wrote some books in the 90s about data dictionaries?
Well, actually, I think I'm the person who wrote the very first book on data dictionaries and meta modeling, and that was came out in 1981. So I'm surprised you could still find it.
Okay,
but it's out there. So sometimes people accuse me of not knowing anything about meta modeling. I beg to differ.
Fantastic. Well, so we're going to be talking today about concept modeling, which is a topic that I think it's fair to say is often misunderstood, or certainly in my experience is misunderstood. So, Ron, what would be really useful to know is how would you describe concept modeling and why is it important?
Well, I think at a very basic level, it's fairly easy to understand because it's simply a structured business glossary. And lots of people need to build business glossaries. We need to define our terms. We need to organize the vocabulary in a way that's accessible and structured and sensible and non-contradictory. So it brings some semantics to the table to help you produce better definitions and definitions that stick together collectively as well as individually. So first and foremost, it's just simply a way of building a business glossary. But there's a lot more to it than that, because I look at it as a way, and we approach it as a way of developing shared understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you get everybody on the same page early in projects and initiatives, you're going to find it difficult. You're going to stumble over miscommunications and hidden ambiguities all the way through. So we sort of think of it as a way, deliberate, structured, sort of engineering approach to developing shared understanding. Now, there's a lot more to it than that. I could go on. You stop me if you want to.
Well, no, it's interesting, Ron, because one of the things I originally worked in the insurance industry, and before I built of concept models, I was already sort of probably quite badly building elements of concept models, because in the insurance industry, there are terms like claim. Now, a claim is different than an incident, and an incident is different than an incident report. Because an incident occurs, there's an incident report, which may or may not become a claim, because you can have something that you report for notification only. And you have like a policy, and you have a policy has coverages, which are made up of perils. And all of these things are really important. But I found that people would use, in the actual business, would use words quite imprecisely. So they'd say claim when what they really meant was incident. And by having that, and I mean, back then I was just basically a glossary was what I was working with. But being able to say, well, do you mean like an incident report or do you mean claim, meant that we were able to avoid a whole bunch of pain that would have happened if we'd taken stuff at face value. Is that the kind of thing you...
Absolutely. Yeah. And in fact, beyond that, a lot of people, when they say claim, they actually mean the amount of the claim, the dollar amount.
Yeah.
And so we confuse the quantity of something. I like to say the quantity of something with the something. And those are two different things. And, you stumble over that a lot. So insurance is rife with examples, but in our experience, every business, every area of knowledge, let's say every body of knowledge has the same process, the same problems. And by the way, that even extends to the professional discipline of of business analysis.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Uh,
absolutely, absolutely.
in
So,
my
sorry, Ron, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, in my experience in chatting with people, they don't always mean the same things when they use, words in our discipline. So
Oh yeah, even the acronyms people have
yeah.
different. So I should explain, if you are watching live on LinkedIn, you can add a comment, and if you add a comment, we'll bring some up on screen. It will show your name and your LinkedIn photograph, but do comment, ask questions as we go along, should you like to. So we've sort of talked about the what and why of concept models. A next logical question, Ron, would be who. So I guess, who are they for? Who should create them? Who should be the consumers of them?
Well, that covers a lot of territory. One of the things I didn't mention in just describing the what was actually a concept model is a great way to attack data quality problems. And obviously that's related to the kind of examples we were giving, but you might not think of, data architects and information architects as being sort of consumers or participants in this area. But absolutely, people who write business rules, which our firm does a lot of. That's sort of our area of specialty. Unless you have a blueprint to the knowledge, a blueprint to the vocabulary, and it's structured, you're going to struggle really to find the expressions that you want in order to bring out clarity in your rules. You and I, just before this broadcast, were talking about the difficulties of editing and writing and clarity. And so that's right on the money. Data architects and business architects, we find that another thing about concept models is that they will give you a stable platform, a stable architecture that will last not just years, but decades, because you're getting at the core knowledge. And there's no better way to build your development around than that. So the other people I should mention just in passing, is it's primarily for business people. This is a tool in terms of getting at semantics that business people can get engaged with. There's nothing behind the curtains. There's nothing hidden. It's all about bringing out the semantics in the meeting. So we deal with compliance managers and regulators and policy makers and even legal staff, knowledge managers. It
Yeah,
really crosses the gamut of people who are involved with knowledge in one way or another in the organization.
which is, I suppose, so many people, particularly in a sort of knowledge or information type business. But a question that Nuruddin asks is it right to say that concept models demonstrate the linkages between elements in the glossary?
That's a good way to talk about it. And let me say it this way. It's because concept models, and it's based on a linguistic standard, SBVR, Semantics of Business Vocabulary and Business Rules. That's what its origin is. But it focuses equally on nouns and verbs. And so when you say connections between things, when we write, when we talk, just like we're doing now, we're using sentences. And how do you connect the nouns in these sentences? Well, you're using verbs. And so you'll find, and it was a surprising revelation to me, I learned over many years' time, that a lot of the ambiguities you run across are actually more to do with the verbs that are missing or
Yeah,
that are misstated than just the nouns. So
yeah.
yes, exactly right on target.
Yeah, yes, those linkages. And well, our mutual friend Ryan from South Africa says, I'm a big fan of concept models. Without it, there is room for too much ambiguity, which I think is, again, of course, spot on the money.
Hi, Ryan.
Yeah. Hi, Ryan. Glad you could tune in.
Yeah.
And Lisa, gosh, Lisa's someone I used to work with. So Lisa, hello. Hope you're doing well. Lisa says, how do you maintain these concept models? What's your advice as things are often set up and then disregarded once a project is over? Which is kind of true, isn't it? Because so often it's a project that creates the impetus to create something, and it could be such a useful reference, but it kind of dies. How do you stop it dying, Ron?
Yeah, well, create it within some repository, and unless it's highly engaged and connected to the ongoing activities, the writing activities, whether they're requirements, business rules, or even compliance documents, whatever it is, and unless it's tied into the writing of things, yeah, it can go away. But I tell you frankly, we had one client that called us in after a decade. And I was wondering, I hadn't heard from him in a decade. And then why are they calling me in? They sounded really, really angry or startled or something. I said, oh God, what did we do? And they had the concept model from
Wow.
10 years ago laid out on the mahogany desk in the executive boardroom, because they realized it was their blueprint for the next generation of software. What I'm telling you is, once you engage management and you engage business people, they're going to get it, and they're going to realize that, hey, we can't do without this blueprint. So it very quickly becomes something that they depend on and want to keep around.
Yeah, yeah. Which kind of leads us to the next question, which is how to get started, because there will be people, I'm sure, listening to this who work for organizations where there is no concept model at the moment. There might not even be knowledge of concept modeling. So how would you recommend getting started?
Well, we always look, in one case, for problem terms, ones that are really giving us issues. You use the word claim. That's a great place to start. Just jump in, and then you'll realize you have to explore a lot of additional terms and concepts to make sense of that. Or it could be sometimes stakeholders are very frustrated because even the business analyst or some of the other requirements people are using IT speak and not speaking the language of the business. That's a great way to sort of back up and say, hey, let's talk business.
Mhm.
Compliance people are often desperate for friends out there. I don't know if people realize this, but compliance people really feel left out a lot. They often are people who can latch onto it. And dare I say it, if there's an agile project that's sort of looping its way out of control, I know that never happens. But that's a good way to sort of bring some centerpiece to the table and say, hey, let's organize ourselves around the core knowledge of this problem, and then we can't go too far astray.
Yeah.
So there are lots of opportunities to get started. And then it boils down to, how do you personally get started? And the point I always make is, we're not taught in IT training or BA training how to define terms. You think it just comes naturally and natively. It doesn't.
Yeah.
So you need some training. You need a little bit of reading. The book is a good place to start. Learn the skills in that linguistic area. I don't know why it's outside of our training, but it's right on the mark.
Yeah, and that brings us to Gabrielle, who says, or Gabriel, apologies if I'm mispronouncing your name there, who asks, do you have a book on the topic? And of course, yes, the Business Knowledge Blueprints by Ron would be an excellent place to start, I would suggest. But people may want other resources. So, I mean, where would you recommend that people get information about these sorts of topics?
Well, I think the best place to look is the website that we do, public service website, brcommunity.com. It's been around a long time. And for the last year and a half, 2 years, I've been writing a lot of articles about concept models, and they're sort of bite-sized and more approachable. So if you want to convince yourself that there's something here for you, I would probably start looking at some of those articles or columns, really, and just read about it and find out how it might help you out. I think that's the way I'd start.
Fantastic. And is that, because I just quickly typed that on screen, I put a comma instead of a dot, but is that right? It's BR Community. It's not hyphen, is it, Ron?
No, it's not. It's BR Community, businessrulescommunity.com. And just look for, just do a search for articles on concept model, and you'll find a ton of them.
Fantastic. Excellent. And if people want to follow you on social media, sort of Twitter, LinkedIn, they can find you there?
Pretty easy to do.
Yeah.
Ronald _G_Ross. That's Twitter.
Fantastic. Excellent. Well, Ron, I mean, we could continue talking about this for a lot longer.
Yeah, why'd we only schedule 15 minutes? What's your problem?
That's the constraint. It's an enabling constraint. It means we get to the point. That's the theory. But Ron, always a pleasure to speak to you. So
My pleasure.
Thank you so much for taking the time to have a chat. Thank you everyone for watching. Do remember you can go to the website onthespot.today, and there are all the previous episodes archived there. So until next time, thanks everyone for watching. Thanks again, Ron, and see you soon.
Thank you, Adrian. Great chat.